On October 21, 2018, a seemingly trivial argument over changing a television channel allegedly escalated into a tragic double homicide in Tampa, Florida. Tyrone Terell Johnson, then 42 years old, stands accused of fatally shooting his live-in girlfriend, Stephanie Willis, 34, and her 10-year-old son, Ricky Willis, in their shared apartment. According to investigators, the altercation spiraled out of control, leading Johnson to retrieve a firearm and shoot both victims multiple times. The case sent shockwaves through the local community, with many struggling to comprehend how a domestic dispute could result in such extreme violence. In court proceedings, the defense has argued that the incident was a crime of passion, claiming Johnson acted in a fit of rage, while prosecutors assert that the murders were premeditated, pointing to the nature of the shootings and Johnson's subsequent behavior. The trial has drawn intense attention, highlighting themes of domestic violence, anger management, and the devastating consequences of unchecked escalation. According to Tyrone Terell Johnson's statements to investigators, the fatal altercation began when he changed the television channel to watch a football game, which allegedly upset Stephanie Willis and sparked a heated argument. Johnson claimed that as tensions escalated, he attempted to de-escalate the situation by leaving the apartment. He stated that he went to the master bedroom to pack his belongings, intending to leave. Johnson, a disabled military veteran who said he had difficulty walking due to a knee injury, emphasized that he was not in a position to engage physically, suggesting his actions were motivated by a desire to avoid further conflict. These claims have since become a central part of his defense, as his legal team argues that his physical limitations and intentions to leave the situation contradict the assertion of premeditated violence. Tyrone Terell Johnson told investigators that the argument escalated further when Stephanie Willis followed him into the bedroom, continuing to berate him and blaming him for her son's recent suicide. According to Johnson, the confrontation turned physical when Stephanie allegedly pushed him off his knee roller device, leaving him sitting on the floor. Johnson, a disabled veteran, claimed that he was physically vulnerable and remained seated as the argument intensified. As tensions mounted, Stephanie's 10-year-old son Ricky entered the room and accused Johnson of harming his mother. Johnson admitted that he pushed Ricky away, an act he said was meant to defend himself. He then retrieved his Glock 22.40 caliber handgun. In the heat of the moment, Johnson shot Stephanie, claiming he felt overwhelmed and threatened. According to his account, Ricky briefly exited the room, but then re-entered, and Johnson fired again, this time striking the child. However, prosecutors painted a far more chilling picture of the events that unfolded that day. They alleged that after fatally shooting Stephanie Willis, Tyrone Terell Johnson pursued 10-year-old Ricky, who had fled and was hiding under his bed in fear. Evidence collected at the scene, including shell casings and blood found in the boy's bedroom, corroborated this version of events, suggesting that Ricky was deliberately targeted after attempting to escape. Prosecutors argued that Johnson's actions were not the result of an impulsive or emotionally charged outburst, but rather a cold and calculated decision to eliminate both witnesses. They described his behavior as premeditated and deliberate, pointing to the sequence of events and the evidence trail as proof of his intent. This starkly contrasted with Johnson's claims of self-defense and fear, framing him instead as an individual who knowingly and methodically carried out a double homicide. Deputies from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office arrived at the apartment in response to Tyrone Terell Johnson's 911 call, during which he claimed he had been attacked by his girlfriend, Stephanie Willis. What they found inside was a grim and heartbreaking scene. Stephanie's lifeless body was in the master bedroom, while her 10-year-old son, Ricky, was found dead in his own room. Investigators documented the evidence meticulously, recovering multiple bullet casings in the master bedroom and under Ricky's bed. Blood spatter in both locations told a story of violence that extended beyond the confines of a single room, contradicting Johnson's initial claim of self-defense. Detectives questioned Johnson in a tense and emotional interview. Johnson appeared tearful but gave a series of inconsistent statements about the events leading up to the shootings. He claimed that the argument began when Stephanie insulted his deceased son, saying, "That's why my son killed himself like a little expletive." Johnson argued that this deeply personal attack pushed him into an emotional state from which he couldn't recover. Johnson stated that he acted out of fear and emotional turmoil, but the evidence painted a different picture. Shell casings under Ricky's bed suggested that the child had tried to hide during the chaos, only to be pursued. Blood patterns and the physical placement of the bodies indicated that Johnson had moved between rooms to carry out the shootings. Prosecutors used these findings to challenge Johnson's account, arguing that the sequence of events showed deliberate and calculated actions, not an emotional loss of control. While Johnson's claims highlighted the depth of personal pain he felt during the argument, the trajectory of the bullets and forensic evidence told a story of intent and finality. This stark contrast between Johnson's narrative and the physical evidence became the core of the case, leaving a grieving community to grapple with the senseless loss of 2 lives. Johnson was charged with multiple counts, including first-degree premeditated murder for Stephanie's death and second-degree murder for Ricky's. The trial began in late 2021 and revealed disturbing details of the crime. Prosecutor John Terry painted Johnson as a deliberate killer. He emphasized the forensic evidence showing that Ricky was hunted down while hiding under his bed. Terry described this as a calculated execution, arguing that Johnson walked 30 feet and fired multiple shots into a defenseless child. Johnson's public defender, Donna Perry, portrayed the events as a tragic crime of passion. She argued that Johnson was provoked by Stephanie's insults and physical aggression. Perry also highlighted Johnson's military background and disabilities, suggesting he was overwhelmed by the situation. Johnson called his father in South Carolina during the altercation. His father allegedly witnessed parts of the confrontation and corroborated Johnson's claim that he was trying to leave the apartment. Prosecutors emphasized the location of bullet casings under the child's bed and blood spatter consistent with Ricky being shot in his bedroom. This evidence directly contradicted Johnson's claim that the boy re-entered the master bedroom before being shot. Although there were prior 911 calls related to the apartment, none directly implicated Johnson. Neighbors expressed shock and sorrow, particularly for the young boy, whom one described as a close friend of her daughter. The murders left the Tampa community grieving. Neighbors expressed outrage over the senseless killings, particularly the death of a young child. In November 2021, after hearing weeks of testimony and reviewing the evidence, the jury found Tyrone Terell Johnson guilty of first-degree premeditated murder for the killing of Stephanie Willis and second-degree murder for the death of her 10-year-old son, Ricky. The verdict was a significant turning point in the case, affirming the prosecution's argument that Johnson's actions were intentional and calculated. The trial has now entered the penalty phase, where the jury must weigh the ultimate question: should Johnson receive the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole? Prosecutors are making a strong case for the death penalty, emphasizing the heinous and deliberate nature of the crimes. They argue that Johnson's pursuit of Ricky, who sought refuge under his bed, exemplifies the cold and calculated intent behind his actions, making the death penalty a fitting response to such brutality. Johnson's defense team, however, continues to plead for leniency, portraying him as a man overwhelmed by emotional turmoil and personal struggles, including his physical disabilities and the lingering grief over his own son's death. They argue that the murders were not premeditated, but instead the result of extreme emotional distress during an intense confrontation. The penalty phase has brought renewed focus on the moral and legal complexities of justice in this case, with the jury tasked with delivering a sentence that balances accountability for the victims and the acknowledgement of Johnson's humanity, however flawed. The community waits anxiously for a decision that will bring some form of resolution to a deeply tragic and unsettling case. Thank for watching.